Fairfax, Delegate Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise for a point of personal privilege.
Delegate has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker and ladies and gentlemen of the House, you're about to see and hear something that you have never seen or heard before. I stand before you to discuss briefly, Mr. Speaker, the wisdom and importance of passing HB 4003, an extreme risk protective order bill. Nothing new there, but here's the unusual part. I join a group of supporters of the ERPO bill, as it's called, that I don't often agree with, but I am really pleased to do so today. This legislation has been endorsed by the likes of Attorney General William Barr, Secretary of Education Betsy DeVos, Senator Marco Rubio, Vice President Mike Pence, and yes, President Donald Trump. 17 states have adopted these statutes, Mr. Speaker, and several of them are deep red. Former Governor, now Senator Rick Scott, signed one into law in Florida. Then Governor Mitch Daniels signed one in Indiana after it passed its Republican-controlled General Assembly. And President Trump's Commission on School Safety urged states to pass these laws. Attorney General Barr, when he said, quote, "We need to push the ERPOs," opined that, quote, "This is the single most important thing we can do in the gun control area." Mr. Speaker, these national Republican leaders are no less dedicated to protecting Second Amendment rights than anyone in this body. But they have come to the thoughtful conclusion that these bills strike a proper balance between an individual's Second Amendment rights and issues of public and personal safety. The President's Commission called on states to adopt these bills and provided a checklist of provisions it suggested these bills including a prompt hearing, a prompt return of the firearm, limits on who can apply for an order, and safeguards that the process won't be abused. HB 4003 addresses all of those issues, Mr. Speaker. It limits the initial temporary order to no more than 14 days. It includes a heightened standard of proof of clear and convincing evidence, something actually the NRA has said is important to its support of these bills. HB 4003 requires that a judge must find clear and convincing evidence that a person poses a substantial risk of harm to self or others before a final order can be issued. The point, Mr. Speaker, is that the bill focuses on providing and protecting the due process and Second Amendment rights of the subject of the order. Now, Mr. Speaker, some skeptics have worried that the process could be abused by an ex-girlfriend or an ex-wife, but not HB 4003. The ex-wife or angry neighbor can't just run off to court to make accusations. A petition can be brought only by law enforcement or the Commonwealth's attorney after an independent investigation, and the bill attaches a very stiff penalty, a year in jail, for anyone who falsely makes a report to law enforcement. Mr. Speaker, we always seem to bog down on the question of whether this bill or that bill could or would have prevented the last tragedy. With all due respect, that's not the issue, certainly not with this bill. This bill has been shown to be effective. It is an evidence-based idea. The President's Commission cited two well-regarded studies from Duke University and Indiana University showing that suicides in Connecticut and Indiana are down significantly since passage of these bills in those states. And as the members of this body well know, unfortunately, more than half of the gun deaths in Virginia are suicides. It's an epidemic that's particularly rampant in the rural areas of our state and with our veterans. This bill, which may well help avoid the next Virginia beach, we know will predictably save lives. Now, Mr. Speaker, I can't claim a consensus, but surely there is a growing bipartisan trend across the country, and urged on by our own federal government, to pass these life-saving bills. Let's show Virginians, Mr. Speaker, who are watching us so very closely today, that we can still work together in a bipartisan way to save lives in Virginia. Let's pass HB 4003. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.